Ciao everyone, it's Cassidy Civet here, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about that time in January of this year when I flew to San Marino to audition for the Eurovision Song Contest, or for Una Voce per San Marino more specifically. Gonna talk about the 2-week trip that I did to Europe for the audition, and hopefully this video doesn't get too long. Let's just jump right in. Special thanks to this video sponsor, me! Because it's always me. How do you think I can afford to get the best furry pop music made and then fly my own butt to San Marino just to perform it? It's all because of your support. So keep streaming my music, keep watching this video, and if you're wanting to do even more than that, I have a Patreon, and you can get merch at the links in the description. I'll tell you more at the end of the video, but for now, let's just continue. Now, we've talked about Eurovision a time or two on this channel before, so I'm going to skip my history lesson, and you can catch up on this decades-old contest elsewhere. I'm specifically going to talk about San Marino in this video, and my experience in their competition, with only a short preamble. San Marino is a landlocked microstate in Europe, entirely within the borders of Italy, much like the Vatican. They've entered Eurovision 11 times since debuting in 2008, but have only made the grand final 3 times. That's supposed to be a 3. 4 of their total entries were done by the one and only Valentina Monetta, who a lot of the Eurovision fandom considers to be a legend. You're gonna want to remember her. She comes back in this video. So me, being the avid Euro fan that I am, well, I've been looking for a way to audition for Eurovision for years. I decided to take the leap and participate in the very first Una Voce per San Marino. This seems to be the new national final format that San Marino is using going forward. The cool part is they've allowed it so that anyone from anywhere in the world can submit a song, as long as you fly to San Marino and audition it. I bought my pricey round-trip ticket with Air France, and I worked some crazy hours last December to make this all happen. I'm talking 9 days in a row, 2 days off, 9 days in a row again, and then the next day, January 4th, bam, I flew to Europe. Now this was all in January of 2022, so COVID was very much still a thing, especially in Europe. But thankfully, given my dual citizenship, getting into the EU was a breeze. I hope I can find those after. The first hiccup in my plan was that I thought I had purchased my tickets to Rimini Airport, so I thought I was doing Vancouver, Paris, Rimini. But I quickly discovered that Rimini Airport doesn't seem to exist anymore. The Italians I know told me that it was bought out by a bunch of Russian oligarchs and is kind of just a private airport now, so... yeah, my ticket was actually going to Bologna instead. Now, this isn't really a big deal. I just didn't have any plans for Bologna. My itinerary had been set up so that I would get to Rimini and get to San Marino within the day. But now that I was going to Bologna, I had an extra day. So, while I was enjoying my layover in Paris, sitting in a Parisian cafe, I hopped on Airbnb, quickly reserved a room for the night in Bologna, while also altering my reservation in San Marino to start the next night. The Bologna Airbnb was literally a 10-minute walk from the airport. So, bam! Everything resolved and taken care of. Let's continue on the journey. Luckily, I actually did get to enjoy some of the sights in my brief layover in Paris. At least what was reasonable to get to by public transit from Charles de Gaulle Airport, anyway. So I actually went to Notre Dame Cathedral, which was visible from the Parisian cafe I mentioned before. But I didn't get to the Eiffel Tower. Ah well, maybe next time. Once I got back to the airport and the connection was over, we went from Paris to Bologna, with some turbulence as we flew over the Alps, but it was a pretty quick, simple flight. It was raining when we landed, and I walked to my Airbnb, no problem. Walking in the rain? Please, I'm from Canada. Time to rest, though. The trip is far from over. It's just beginning. When I travel lately, especially for cons, I like to try and find a local fur or two who might know the area better and can help me out since I'm in a foreign country a lot of the time. And this was no different. I knew about just one furry who lived in San Marino, and we happened to have a mutual friend. So I reached out, and guess what? Turns out he was moving out of San Marino and happened to be in Bologna that exact time. What luck. We met up the next day. He picked me up from the Airbnb. We went to an Italian IKEA with his partner before hitting the road for an hour drive to San Marino. He was heading back to clean out his apartment, and I got dropped off at my Airbnb. Thanks for the ride. Now this place was a nice little house about 3 kilometers downhill from the city center, courtesy of some long winding mountain roads. It had also just snowed, so it was icy too. But this wasn't just any house. Nah, this is the residence of the one and only most famous inhabitant of San Marino, Valentina Monetta! I told you she'd be important later. Yes, as it turns out, the cheapest and most walkable house on Airbnb happened to belong to Miss Monetta. That's where I actually stayed while I was in San Marino. Wow. She and I would go on to have lots of fun discussions about everything from Eurovision to Big Brother Italy, which was on air at the time when I was there. Also indulged a little bit in my favorite, but it was cut with tobacco and it made me feel gross. So anyway, time to sleep. First full day in San Marino, January 7th. I decided to basically just walk all over the main city. I went to a Michelin star restaurant, had some rabbit stew, and basically just wandered around taking in all the pretty views and sights of this cool new country I'd never been in before. Just enjoying the old ancient vibes. Second day in San Marino was considerably less successful. I decided to venture down the other side of the mountain, which was a mistake. There was absolutely nothing there. Everything was closed. No tourist stuff, just an endless downhill walk that I did for about 5 hours before I eventually just called a taxi and tapped out. Bit of a bust, but oh well. Day 3, as I struggled to make a 3 again. Audition time! I was up bright and early to be there for the 9 a.m. start time at the Teatro Titano. When I was walking up to the venue from Valentina's house in the rain, a car pulled up beside me with a dad and his older teenage son asking me for directions in Italian. I told them I was a tourist and they left. When I got to the venue, I found out the teen was one of my competitors. We talked a bit. His English was a bit rough and my Italian is a bit non-existent, but it was honestly just nice to talk to somebody, you know? I'm all alone traveling in a new country, in a new continent. It's a lot, you know? Everyone at the audition had to fill out paperwork to sign in. Then we all sat in the theater for a way too long lecture on how to write a catchy, captivating pop song. I just think that if we were all already sitting in the theater with the songs that we had written, waiting to audition, maybe your hour-long lecture on what makes a good song, it's a little late. Especially since they didn't even give critiques after our performances. So it's like, what is the point of this? Also, there was no water. Like, I have to make this super clear to you guys. There was no water to speak of available for us at the audition. Like, you think for a singing competition, like, maybe they would provide some water or cups, but no, you would think wrong. I literally went in the bathroom of this several hundred-year-old theater, cupped my hands, and just drank out of this tap like an animal. I know, right? An animal. Despite the long-winded lecture, there wasn't a lot of time to think and prepare because I was one of the first acts up in the day. Not in fursuit, obviously. I respect Eurovision too much for that. And I know that if I'm going to be in the contest, being able to look into the camera and connect with the viewers at home is a super important step in winning the contest and getting them to vote for you. Though, I am open to a dancer or something wearing my fursuit while I perform on stage. You know, I'm open to ideas. Then we get the best of both worlds. So I got up on stage and gave it my best shot. I've been conflicted as to whether or not I want to release the song that I performed in San Marino, as releasing it would make it ineligible to submit in future years. But you know what? I've decided that I'm going to include it on my next album. I think once people hear the kinds of songs that I'm submitting as Eurovision entries, maybe they will get behind me a bit more. Because it's all a bit hard to convey when it all has to be kept secret, you know? Well, regardless, I finished my audition, which I still sadly do not have footage for, made more idle chit-chat in the lobby of the theater, even getting to talk with Alessandro Cappucciani for the first time in person after talking about Eurovision for years via email and even once by phone. He's the head of delegation for San Marino, by the way. The father-teen duo from before decided to treat me to some traditional Italian pizza since I had not had any yet while I was in the country. Also had some pistachio liqueur, which was amazing. The rain had turned into snow by the time we left the theater, and it was coming down hard. I knew I could help them clear the snow off their car, so I used my umbrella. I'm like, I know how to clear snow off a car. I'm from Canada. After they left, I continued walking around the main city in the snow, just doing as many touristy things as I could while there was still light out. Walking back to Valentina's house every day once the sun had set was so cool you could see for miles this Italian countryside, and you could even hear wolves sometimes howling. It was crazy. I managed to get my plane ticket changed to spend an extra week in Europe, since Further Confusion 2022 had been cancelled a few days into my trip, and that was what I was going to come back early for. So I decided to stay the extra week back in France, where I stayed at a university dorm with someone I had met online for a week. This was a whole other non-Eurovision side of my European trip, but still fun. Got to experience Troyes, the medieval city. Just look at how crazy these buildings are. While in Troyes, though, on my second to last night, I was invited to the bar by the class of the person that I was staying with. Their English lit class wanted to go to the bar and get, I assume, lit. And it was at this bar where the results of the San Marino auditions actually got posted. I did not make it. And actually, most of the acts that the Eurovision fandom was hyped for online didn't make it either. In hindsight, and in regular sight, since they published all of the people who got through the audition, it became very clear to me that San Marino really wanted a song in Italian. And why not? They haven't sang in Italian since 2013, and it did just so happen that the previous winning entry was a rock song in Italian from Italy, so I can understand why they might have some, language envy. It's just a shame they decided to pursue this goal in the first year of their international national final. People flew in from Canada and from Australia and from all over the world to get there, and for us all to get cut, so it was like mostly just Italians that made it through, because kind of a really defeating feeling. But I am also Italian. I just sang in English. This meme I found at the time really captures what I mean about all of the fan favorite acts getting cut in the audition round. The only survivor was Elis Mraz, who had already lost the Czech Republic's selection for Eurovision at this point, and who was then disqualified the next round from the San Marino one because she sang over the allotted 3 minutes. So cool. So that basically concludes my Eurovision journey. So let's go back to the bar. One moment that sticks in my memory was hearing all those kids in the bar. And I know that they're 18, but they're still kids to me. And they're telling me about how lucky I am that I can fly to other countries and I get to travel, and that's a big reason why I'm so age positive lately. Because you think I would have been able to do any of this when I was 18? Any of the traveling, any of the cons? The answer, unless you're obscenely wealthy, is no. Most people can't do those things when they're 18. Setting up those kinds of expectations for yourself can be a really harmful thing. And setting realistic goals can be a hard thing for anyone to do. But once you drop the expectation of getting immediate results and gratification, you can really do a lot in your life. Eventually. It just takes time. So I flew back home from Europe. Had to book another separate ticket through Kiwi.com because of a problem with my first ticket. I was a little sussed out by this company at first and the reviews their website had, but they got me home pretty cheap and they haven't let me down yet. The return had 2 layovers, one in Toronto, one in Montreal, across 2 airlines. The initial flight from Paris to Toronto was delayed, so when I landed, I had to run like hell to the gate for the next flight. In fact, it had already been delayed by so much that the app had automatically moved me to the next flight. But if I had stuck with that, I would not have made it back home to Vancouver until the next day. So as soon as the plane touched ground, I bolted out of there, and I'm like, I gotta get to the gate from the previous flight. So I made it to the check-in desk, and I'm telling the lady, I'm like, I already had a seat on this flight, but you guys moved me because you didn't think the other plane would arrive in time. Can I please get back on this plane? And thankfully they allowed me, because I also didn't have any check bags. It was like the Amazing Race, I swear. Then at last I landed back in Vancouver at about 8 p.m. And wouldn't you know it, I had work the next morning at 10 a.m. No post-travel jet lag for me. Your girl just goes too hard when she's working for her dreams. What can you do? Can only move forward and plan for next time. And so yeah. Hi, Editor Civet here. Just wanted to interject to say that I forgot to mention that there is a really cool werewolf museum in San Marino. So there will be a separate Eurovision 2022 audition vlog coming out, but this is the video telling the story, the full story. The other video will just be a vlog, just letting you know, okay? This concludes my trip and audition story. Ultimately unsuccessful for Eurovision, as you can gather. But I made so many memories and experienced so many cool things while I was in Europe that frankly I can't wait to go back and try again. Experiencing Europe and France, Italy, and San Marino all for the first time was such a great experience. I bet it'll be even better the second time. The show, of course, continued without me and ended with San Marino pitting the final 9 emerging artists against 9 big-name celebrity artists, which, what? This format might be the biggest hang-up for me considering trying it again, because I just don't see this as being very fair. If San Marino has always had the ability to pull these large artists, why haven't they been doing that for years? Why wasn't it their approach before? They're only doing it now that they can put small artists against the big boys? Like, come on. Given that the eventual winner of UPVSM was Achille Loro, one of the biggest musicians in all of Italy, with like 3 million monthly listeners on Spotify and over 1 million followers on Instagram, San Marino, I have to ask you, what the hell chance do you think any small artist has of competing against something like that? Like, for real. But in the end, San Marino got the song that they wanted, a rock song in Italian, and they got a result that they were familiar with, a non-qualification. So hopefully San Marino learned some valuable lessons from this going forward. Sometimes trend riding ain't it, and it goes to show that name recognition and language really don't go that far if the song is not up to snuff. And like, can we just be honest for a second? The song, Stripper, was not good. In fact, it was kind of bad. Frankly, I'm not convinced that any of the songs in the final for UPVSM were really Eurovision ready. Like, they might have all been 3-minute songs, sure, but were they really contenders for Eurovision? Like, Actually, update to my gripes on the format for this year. It looks like San Marino is dropping the thing where they send the big artist directly to the final, and is instead gonna make the big artists compete with whoever makes it through the auditions in the semifinals, which is definitely better. I'm just hoping to make it through the first freaking round this time. But maybe, if Sunmu wants to take a real risk on an artist with a vision, I hope that they will be into the song that I present to them this year, which is sort of like a Western-tinged pop empowerment anthem in some way, but kind of also a dramatic story. It's a banger. You'll just have to listen to it when it comes out. Maybe Sunmu will actually qualify if they take a risk on a smaller artist with a passion and a vision, instead of just banking on some big celebrity who did not give them the result they wanted. Overall, though, I'm just excited at the idea of heading back to San Marino to try again. My 2023 entry is nearly complete. The instrumental's basically done. I'm just gonna get some real instruments on it, get some vocals done at the studio, and send it off. Plus, I just purchased my plane tickets a few days ago, using the leftover balance from my canceled MFF flight, so I will be spending all of February in Europe. Hopefully, because I advanced through the auditions and I'm participating in the semifinals and maybe finals of the Una Voce per San Marino 2023, who knows? But I definitely will not be stopping my Eurovision attempts for as long as I'm financially capable. If you want to help me make it to Eurovision, then why not consider subscribing? Like and comment, check out the links in the description, get to know all the fun ways you can support me and my musical journey. Just look at all these patron names going by, wow! Shout out to my top patron once again, Cassidy's Toy. Whether my ESC goals work out or not, a second album is on the horizon for me, and if you'd like your name on the physical copy of the CD when it's printed, or in the credits of all of my YouTube videos, make sure to consider a pledge on my Patreon. All patrons at the time of printing get their names on the album. Ooh. Well, that's it for this story. Thank you guys. I have more videos on the way, and hopefully I will be at Eurovision 2023 in the UK, and we'll figure out what all this hullabaloo is about. See you guys in San Marino. Bye! Mwah!